There we go. And I'm going to spotlight. Can I spotlight? Okay. So we're going to do from the recipe, cooking khichdi, and I'm going to start by just measuring out the rice and the split mung dal. So as I was saying in there, I always like to just measure with my body, like my eyes and my hands. And I've tested it sometimes and it's pretty close to like official measures, but it's good to get used to this. So I'm gonna measure out, I'm doing about a 1/4 cup of the yellow split mung dal. Okay, so I'm just making 1 serving here. This is just for me, and I'm doing the kapha recipe because actually I'm going to do the vata pitta one. I can't decide for myself because I am trying to remove some excess kapha, but I'm generally a vata pitta type person. So I'm going to do the vata pitta one. So this is about a 1/4 cup of the mung beans, and then I've got my basmati rice. And let me just measure this real quick and see how accurate my estimation was. Yeah, look at that, was pretty close. A little bit less than a 1/4 cup. Okay. So, and then I'm gonna add like an equal amount of rice, basmati rice. And you just wanna rinse it until the water comes out clear. And with this, you can see like, you know, this will kind of bubble up at this point. I'm gonna turn it down a bit because it's, of course it's too much. So the water's looking more clear. That's good. Stop there. And I'm gonna set that aside while I get ready to do the spices. So I'm doing cumin, fennel, and coriander. I like to do spices in an iron pan, so naturally nonstick pan. And I'm not doing mustard seed because it's summertime and I tend to have like, you know, somewhat of a high pitta. So I'm just doing cumin, fennel, and coriander. You could also do, you know, cardamom or something here as well, if you like that. So I'm doing about an equal amount of each one. And then I'm going to heat up my pan. And just add these into the pan.
About how much of each seed?
So I'm doing like a total of a teaspoon. So it's about 1/3 of a teaspoon each.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then you just heat it. I have it on, so I have a gas stove, and like all stoves are a little different, right? So I have mine on like 2.5. My stove gets really hot really quick. And I'm just gonna let that heat up. And what you wanna do is just heat it until you start to smell the aroma of the spices. And you wanna make sure that you don't burn them. So if you're using mustard seeds, they say it's ready when the mustard seeds pop. Lately, I've been finding that I don't know if it's the coriander I'm using, if it's old or something. I've been finding that it hasn't been getting toasted quite enough if I just wait till the mustard seeds pop. You know, it's like, in the way you can tell is like, it'll be a little tough and chewy in your finished cooked product, which you don't really want. So one thing you can do is like, after heating them up, just crush them a little bit also in the mortar and pestle. And that'll just help any kind of like toughness that might come up. All right, so while we're waiting for that, I'll just tell you what else I have here. So I'm gonna put just a little bit of shredded carrot in. I'm gonna do zucchini, kale, and turnip, and just like small amounts of all these, and then some, what do you call this? Coriander leaf or cilantro. Yes. Okay, and I'm going to also use ginger, fresh ginger, and you can use fresh ginger in any of the recipes. It's getting so many things and it's so good for us. And I'm going to be using just a little bit of green onion. Technically for pitta for summer, like you probably should avoid onion or garlic because it's very heating, but I'm just going to put a little in for flavor. All right, so let me check this. And it's good to kind of like stir the seeds around as they're heating up. So I'm just going to shake my pan so you get all, you know, kind of roast them on all sides. I just noticed today before starting this that I'm really super low on ghee, but this is the ghee. I have just enough probably for this recipe. Ghee gets really liquid in the summer. So once this starts heating up, what I will do once it's ready is I'm going to then add, actually I'm going to crush it in here first a little bit, and then I'm going to add the ghee. So just so I can get out, actually I have enough, good enough ghee in there. All right, so I'm going to grab the spoon and I'm going to use about like 2 teaspoons of ghee in this, and then I will add my rice and mung beans. It's starting to, like, I can smell it a little bit, so it's starting to give off the flavor. Just gonna stir it because it's not moving on. And you'll start to see it brown a little bit. It's important not to walk away and leave the spices cooking because they can go from brown to burnt really quickly, especially if you're not sure how hot your stove needs to be. So just a little bit longer for these guys. Yeah, and if they're not properly toasted, it will get like, you'll you know how they're kind of hard. They'll be very chewy and hard in the food, which definitely isn't good. And they also won't release their flavor in the same way. All right, I think these are pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put them in my mortar and pestle. And this is an extra step. It's not in the recipe, but it can be, just make it a little bit better. Carrie, would you mind muting yourself? Unless you have a question. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna just crush these up a little bit. I'm not gonna grind them into a fine powder or anything like that, but just a little bit. If you want to save time, you wanna do this ahead of time, you can toast extra of the seeds, and we will do that for the tea, but you can toast extra of the seeds and just store it for up to a week. It'll still be pretty good in terms of its medicinal qualities. You know, the longer you store it, the more it's gonna lose. Of course, it has more medicinal qualities than if you just bought a powder from the store that was ground up who knows when. All right, so I'm gonna return this pan to the heat. And then I'll put all my spices back in. And I'll put in about a teaspoon of ghee, or 2 teaspoons of ghee. You can measure that out, of course. And then I'm gonna put in my rice and mung beans. And you put them all in there together and just kind of stir it around to get the rice and mung beans coated. And at this point, I'm gonna turn off my pan because this is an iron pan and it'll stay hot. And I don't need to do this for very long. This is just for like kind of until it's all mixed in. I'll show what that looks like. See, like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put this in a pot that it's gonna be cooked in. And if I had my vegetables already, I would go ahead and start this. In fact, I think I'm going to, because I'm not using that many vegetables. I'm going to go ahead and put water in this and start it cooking, because it's going to take a little bit of time for the water to boil. So in this recipe, I was saying to add 6 times the amount of water as what you have combined of the rice and dal. So you can see there how much I have. It was about a 1/4 cup each. This is about a 1/2 cup. So 6 times a 1/2 cup is about 3 cups of water. I'm going to go ahead here and get the filtered water. So it's an estimate, and you can see how you like it. Khichdi should be pretty soft once it's done. It should be pretty soft and mushy, because that is something that our body can digest better. So just keep that in mind. But if you really don't, if it's like too soft and mushy for you, you can, you know, do it with a little bit less water. So I am measuring out the water. Just wanted to see exactly what 3 cups looks like, because I usually don't measure at all. So I had it just right. There's 3 cups, and you can see there's quite a bit of water compared to, I don't know if you can tell, but compared to the rice and dal that's in there. I'm going to go ahead and just get that started. So you want it to come to a boil. And then while that's over there getting ready, I'm going to start with my vegetables. An optional thing to add is turmeric. And I'm going to go ahead and add that. Turmeric is really good for inflammation, and it does help our digestion too. It's considered like the king of the spices in Ayurveda, so it's a good one to include. And I'm looking for my salt. I had it out and I don't know where it is. Oh, it's behind here. Okay. I'm going to add just a little salt. So salt should be to taste. I prefer to start with less salt, and you can always add more later. So I'm just doing this little tiny spoon, which is about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there. And I'm using the Himalayan pink salt, but you can use any high quality salt. All right, so I'm gonna do my root vegetables first, because they are harder. They take a little longer to cook. And I'm not doing a whole lot of this, so I'm just gonna peel part of the carrot. There we go. Oh, I'm gonna do a little extra because I'm gonna use some for my salad. All right, so we've got the carrot there. And then I'm gonna do some turnip. And I'm gonna cut the turnip and just use a little bit of it. So later on, we're gonna get more into like exact recommendations of which vegetables are best for which doshas. But for this cleanse, just follow as I've given. So using mostly leafy greens and with the spices, and it's gonna be good for everyone. We're gonna avoid, again, the nightshades. So tomato, potato, and eggplant. I'm just gonna grate my turnip. You don't have to grate the root vegetables, you can chop them up as well. I just like to grate them because they cook faster that way. All right, so we've got the turnip and the carrot, and I'm gonna go ahead and just put these in my pot, and I'm gonna leave out just a little bit of carrot. The salad is really small, so just a small tiny amount for some extra flavor. I like the flavor of grated carrot. So I'm just leaving just a little tiny bit. I'm gonna put it over here on my plate for my salad. And let's do some zucchini next. So again, just a small quantity. So there's one recommendation in Ayurveda that I really love, which is to cut vegetables on their lifelines. So you can see when you look at a vegetable, the lines, see on the zucchini, it's kind of like up and down. So you're either going to cut along those lines or directly perpendicular to them. And that preserves the most prana, the most energy in the vegetable. It also is really good for our mind. It helps our mind to be sharpened and more focused. A lot of times, we'll do things and we're focusing on like 10 other things at once. But if you're really focusing on this, cutting on those lines, it helps your mind to also be more precise. And then the vegetables look nicer as well. They look more even. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my zucchini in that pot. And then I've got kale. So kale, especially this one, this is this dark Licinto kale, it's pretty tough. It almost needs as much cooking time as the roots. And I also like to chop it really small. We want this food to be very digestible. There is a big thing now about raw food, and raw food has its place. There's some benefits of raw food, but in Ayurvedic cooking, we generally, especially with this detox, we want to avoid raw foods because they're harder to digest or have them in a small quantity. So I'm just going to roll these up and cut them into little ribbons. And you'll notice I'm doing a lot of kale. I really like kale, and generally leafy greens are just the nutrition powerhouses. They're also very cooling. Right now it's a summer season, so it's good to eat more of these. And then I just cut those ribbons into little chunks. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my pot. All right. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of onion, not even this whole thing, because like I said, onion is pretty heating. And in fact, when you're doing something like a very extreme, like spiritual development, they say to avoid onion and garlic because it's so heating. But for now, don't worry about that part. Just if it's summer and it's hot and you have high pitta, then you would want to avoid them. Green onion is less hot than a mature onion. And it's also less tough. So I'm just doing about, I don't know, what is that, like a teaspoon of chopped onion. Putting that in. And this smells so good. Yay. And it looks really pretty. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a little bit of ginger. So I have this really nice ginger tool that someone gifted me, but you can also use, like, a lot of box graters will have this small side. That's usually good for grating ginger, or you can just use a knife and chop it really, really small. So I just like to do this right into the pot. And ginger is super cleansing, so you can always add this. And it's not, even though ginger, we tend to think of it as having somewhat of a pungent or hot taste, it does not aggravate pitta. So that's one thing that's really nice about using ginger as a spice, is that it's good for all the doshas. It's kind of considered a panacea in Ayurveda. There's a certain medicine that's made with, I think it's ginger juice, ginger powder, and dried ginger, if I'm not mistaken, but these are like the universal pills that are for curing almost everything. All right. And then I'm just going to use a little bit of cilantro. And again, I'm going to leave a little bit of this aside because I'm going to put it also in my salad. And with cilantro, I like to just chop it really tiny. All right. I'm going to add that in and just leave a little bit of it aside. If you like your cilantro a little more fresh, you can also wait and let the food cook a little more until you add it. I'm gonna put the rest of that on my salad plate. All right, so that's the khichdi, and I can show you what it's looking like right now. You see it? It's bubbling away there. And as that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and start with the salad and the salad dressing. All right, so I'm just making a small salad. We don't want to have like a full meal of salad, so I'm just going to take a piece of lettuce, chop that up. I think I need to get my knife sharpened. It's not going through all the way. There we go. So here I have my cilantro and carrot that I set aside. And I'm gonna put on the lettuce. Cilantro and carrot on top. Okay, so as you can see, the salad's pretty small. What this does is it actually just stimulates our digestion when we have salad before we eat. And especially when we put on a dressing that I'm going to make, which is the ginger, lemon, and olive oil. So let me grab those things. You can also add black pepper to your dressing and salt. And this dressing, you can make it up ahead of time and save it for, you know, up to a week or so is fine. So again, I don't measure very much, but I'm just going to put in about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. You got that. And then I'm going to grab my lemon. I got out my lemon, but I don't know where it went. So let me grab another one. Oh, here it is. And I always like to squish the lemons before I cut them because they juice better that way. You can use lemon or lime. Either one is fine. I'm just gonna pop the seeds out. By the way, lemon seeds are good for parasites. If you have, or anyone has like ringworm, chewing lemon seeds helps with that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and juice just half of this lemon because it's a pretty big one. And I'll save the other half for my liver cleanse tomorrow. Well, I still got a few seeds in there. That's okay. All right. So I got half the lemon, and I'm gonna add some black pepper, just a few twists. Black pepper is really good for igniting our digestive system. This is gonna really help us to assimilate the food well. I'm gonna add just a pinch of salt and some grated ginger. Ginger, go back. So I did a 1/4 cup of olive oil, more or less, half a lemon, just a pinch of salt, and a couple twists of black pepper. And now I'm grating ginger in. This is going to be about 1.5 teaspoons grated ginger. And I don't, you don't need to peel your ginger before you grate it. You can totally just use it with the peel. Although it's nice to rinse it off because, you know, after you get it from the store, it might have gone through different energies and being touched by different things, but you don't have to peel ginger, and it stays fresh longer if you leave the peel on. All right, so I got all my ingredients for the salad dressing. Since this is such a small amount, I'm just gonna mix it with a fork. You can use a fork or a whisk. And like with all natural salad dressings, without preservatives, you might want to remix it. You know, if you're saving this, you might want to remix it every time you use it. Don't put olive oil in the fridge because it hardens. So again, this one, you want to use it within a couple days. You can use also flaxseed oil. I have that in the instructions, but you can use flaxseed oil. That's really good for if you have any hormone imbalances, and it's also good for high kapha rather than the olive oil. You could replace it. So I'm just going to put a little dressing on the salad to stimulate my digestion. Not coming out a lot. It looks like I'm putting a lot, but that's because I'm using a fork to put it on. All right. So that's it for the salad. And I'm going to just check on our khichdi. So it's bubbling up a lot here and probably a little too much. So I'm going to turn it down. Just want it to simmer. And I can still see it's got a lot of water still, and I can still see the individual mung beans. Usually by the time it's done, you don't see those anymore. They kind of just dissolve into it. So let's say it's about halfway done now. I'm going to let it cook. And I'm going to show you how to make this CCF tea, cumin, coriander, fennel seed tea. Let me put these things aside and just wash the lemon off my hand. But I can stop here in case there's any questions. Any questions? Okay.
Not for me.
All right. So I should have probably done this before I did the spices for the khichdi, because now the pan's oily, but that's okay. I'm just gonna wipe it with a paper towel. So with iron pans, you want it to have a little oil, but if it's got too much oil, I don't want my seeds to get really oily. And of course, you don't have to have an iron pan for this. It's just what I like. They work really well. With an iron pan, you want it to have that patina, like it's like a coating on it. So it always looks a little oily. And that's the natural non-stick coating. All right. Try not to use non-stick pans though, the ones with the coating on them, because the coating comes off and it can cause cancer. All right, so I'm going to just heat up my pan a little again. It's at about 2. And I've got cumin, coriander, and fennel. So all of these are spices that are carminative and somewhat warming. And what that means is that they help to warm up our digestive system. Carminative means they eliminate excess gas. And so that's why we make a tea out of these, and then we drink that tea. It's good to make the tea before your meal, because then it won't be super hot. It'll just like be, once you're done eating, it should be ready, right? But right now we're just gonna roast the seeds, and I wanna try to have about an equal amount of each of these. Okay, so I can measure this for you guys and see how much it actually is. But I'm guessing it's about a tablespoon, but let me see. But again, you're gonna set this aside and like, yeah, so it's not quite a tablespoon, but almost. So I've got about a tablespoon of cumin. Let's see, and about an equal amount of fennel seeds. Yeah, about equal, and then coriander. So out of these spices, coriander and fennel are not too heating. Cumin seed is a little more heating, which is perfectly fine for most uses. But for somebody who has high pitta, and especially in the summertime, you might want to leave out the cumin seed, and you could do something like some cardamom pods instead, okay? And then you will crush them a little bit. But I have here just equal amounts of all 3, cumin, coriander, and fennel. And just like I did for making the khichdi, I'm gonna go ahead and roast these on my pan. And then when you make the actual tea, like 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of the seeds, you know, per cup of tea is all you really need. So you would just boil water and pour it over them. So right now we're just warming these guys up. And I'm gonna check on our kitchery in the meantime. So the kitchery is starting to look less watery and it's still bubbling a lot. So I'm gonna actually just turn it down a little bit because I don't want it to dry up before it's done. But I'll show you guys. So it's been pretty quick. You can see we started at 5, a little after 5, so it's 5:34. So it's, and then we had to chop and everything, so we wasn't cooking yet for even half an hour. All right, so I'm just waiting on these guys to roast. And again, you just want to not leave it. Keep your eye on it because otherwise they can burn. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me, where I end up burning them and then you waste them. You have to start over. So don't do that. It also matters the temperature. So you got to know your stove. So I'm starting to smell the aroma of the seeds. I'm going to just stir them a little more. They smell really good. Another thing that you can do after your food is done cooking, you can add a little lemon or lime juice on it before you eat. And that just, the sour taste helps to stimulate our digestion and help us, you know, digest the food better. So just a few drops of the juice. And then it also helps you to absorb certain nutrients better from the food, like iron, we absorb better. So if you're low iron, putting a little bit of lemon or lime juice on all your food before you eat is one way to just increase your iron absorption. So it's getting really close. It's almost done. I'm going to turn it down some more. Those guys are really close as well. I think they're ready. Let me grab my mitten. I'm gonna give it just a little longer. You can, well, we'll make the tea as well. I'll show you how it's done. So yeah, it takes a bit of practice to know when it's ready because I'm smelling it now, but I don't smell it quite as much as I, want to. And I'm watching them, they're not burning. I'm gonna keep stirring them. It also matters where they are in the pan, right? If they're closer to the flame, they're gonna cook faster. See, now I'm smelling more. Like before I was just smelling fennel, and now I smell the cumin. And now I smell the coriander, so I think they're ready. All right. So, oops, wrong one. Right, I'm gonna turn that one off. And gonna dump these guys out. All right, so to make the tea, you just need some water, and I get filtered water. And you can boil it. However, I'm just gonna boil it in this little fast pan. And it's in the recipe also, if you wanna just use, you know, powdered spices that you buy at the store for this, that's perfectly fine. It just doesn't have as much, you know, medicinal benefit, but you know, it's no problem, especially, you know, we gotta do what we can. Like if it's gonna keep you from actually cooking it, it's better to just use the powders. And one thing that I like to do is sometimes when I know I'm gonna be busy, I'll cook this in a rice cooker. So if you have a rice cooker, you can just put all the ingredients together. And then of course you would either want to roast your spices ahead of time and then add them, or just do the powders. And then you can put it in your rice cooker and you just, you know, hit the switch, let it cook and walk away. And then when you come back, it's done for you. So that makes it a little bit more convenient if you need that factor of convenience. So I'm going to take about a ½ teaspoon of our mix of seeds, cumin, coriander, and fennel. And I'm just going to put it in this cup. And then once the water boils, I'll pour it right on top. So this one is getting quite low on water, so I'm stirring it. I think it's pretty much done, actually. Yeah, it looks done to me. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the kitchery, and this one just boiled as well. I'm going to turn off that one, and I'll just pour it over the seeds and let it steep for about 2-3 minutes. And you can see what this looks like when it's done. It's quite mushy. The dal didn't completely disappear, but mostly. And it just looks like yellow mess. All right, I'm gonna cover it and just let it sit for a moment. That tea smells really good. And when you make the tea, you can then strain out the seeds. So after you let it sit for a few minutes, you just pour it through a strainer. Or you can do, like, if you have those little tea bags, you can put the seeds in a little tea bag and do it that way. That works too. So I'm gonna let these guys sit just a little bit longer. And meanwhile, I'm gonna get my plate. So I've got my salad. I'm gonna add the kitchery. So look how much this made. It made quite a bit, even though we just had a tiny amount of rice and mung beans to start. So what's on my plate is about half of it. And you can experiment for yourself and see how much you need. But there's the finished plate. That's your meal for lunch and dinner. So I think that this tea is probably ready. I'm just gonna strain it like that. And you can sip it during your meal, but the main thing is to have it after. So you don't want to do both. And that's it. It's all ready. So any questions? No? All right. Well, let me know how this goes for you guys. See you later.
Okay.
Bye, Carrie.
Bye, Gayatri.